To this last session, and we are privileged to have with us Professor George Paxinos, who is a professor at NHMRC in Australia and Australia Fellow, Neuroscience Research Australia, Baker Street and Hospital Road, Randwick in Sydney. It's also a privilege that Professor Paxinos is with us since the first Genedis in 2014, and we greatly thank him for that. And the title of his talk is the Brain in the Goldilocks Zone?
Thank you, Amy. Pleased to be here. Doing atlases is not always a pleasant thing. I introduced myself recently to a lady who happened to have used the rat brain stereotaxic coordinates when it first came out 40 years ago this year. She said, "George Paxinos, I thought you were dead." I have a claim to fame. Here is the founder of psychology in 1879, Wilhelm Wundt. I shook the hand that shook the hand that shook the hand of Wundt. And we started our work with the brain of the rat in stereotaxic coordinates that you see here, and then proceeded with other animals because we had in our hands a good stain of the brain, acetylcholinesterase, and it delineates, it shows you the brain without being a neuroanatomist. You can actually figure out what's happening there. I wasn't a neuroanatomist, and at that time, in 1982, when we started our work, somebody said, the gain in the brain is mainly in the stain. And you can see here, I don't always stain the mouse brain, but when I do, I prefer acetylcholinesterase. Neuroscience has not cured any disease. However, it has discovered some factors that delay the onset of dementia, as well as others that bring it earlier. Basically, what's good for the heart is good for the brain. Cardiologists, with their emphasis on the heart, they have coincidentally, health of the heart, coincidentally delayed the onset of dementia. More people suffer from dementia today, but this is due to people living longer. The correct comparison is the percentage of people who have dementia in their 80s today compared to 50 years ago, and fewer octogenarians have dementia today than 50 years ago, according to some scientists. Similarly to the health of the heart, to delay dementia for the health of the brain, one of the most effective ways is physical exercise. Walking, running, swimming, rowing, cycling. If nothing else, the Greek government could take cars off the sidewalks so people can walk and delay the onset of their dementia. Unfortunately, governments here fall, but cars on the sidewalks remain. Possibly more effective than exercise happens to be the most popular thing in Greece, socializing. If activity on Facebook can be taken as an index of socializing, the Greeks might be the best. Given that the third most effective factor in delaying dementia may be the Mediterranean diet, I suggest that doctors amongst you prescribe eating out with friends in Greece. I only stay here half a year. If only I had stayed here longer, my talk might have been more lucid. Factors that harm the heart also harm the brain. Smoking, alcoholic beverages, sedentary lifestyle, poor diet, high body weight, cholesterol, apnea, blows to the head. Seat belts can delay dementia by decreasing the number of times your head hits the windscreen. I did a little study the past September in Greece, in Ithaca, and looked at those who wear seatbelts and those who wear helmets, motorcyclists, car drivers and motorcyclists. And amongst the motorcyclists, two of the motorcyclists who passed before me, two were wearing a helmet, 36 no helmet. And amongst the car drivers, 18 were wearing seatbelts, 36 were not wearing seatbelts. And I can tell you, this morning we did a little study as we were coming here. The situation in Zakynthos is not better. It's actually a bit worse. On Ithaca, they use icons of saints in cars, not seat belts. Atlases can be likened to scientific theories. Like theories, they provide means of finding our way into uncharted territory. As a medical scientist, I map the brains of humans and laboratory animals. These maps allow scientists, inspired by human considerations such as Alzheimer's, to construct models of the disease in, for example, the rat, the mouse. The maps give them the coordinates of each brain region and help neuroscientists navigate seamlessly from humans to mouse and back. On the 40th anniversary of the publication of the rat brain stereotaxic coordinates, I take the opportunity to say something of my journey into the brain and beyond. The idea of constructing an atlas came to me when I was visiting a scientist at Cambridge in 1976, and I bumped onto acetylcholinesterase, and I thought I'd be able to do an atlas. It was really a bit of a hubris. I was not an anatomist, but I found Charles Watson, who was an anatomist, and you can see here us working in about 1981, just prior to the publication in 1982. And we did, oops, will it play? Maybe. It won't play. We did then, oh, there it is, an atlas of an MRI atlas of the rat brain, and we moved with the times that is a bit, and here you can see not only the structure, but the connections. The structure, of course, is not as readily seen as in histology, but you have the benefit that makes up that you can see the direction of fibers in the MRI. Now we are trying the human. We just sent to publication an atlas of the human brain stem based on MRI, and we're now working on the living human, that is not post-mortem tissue with MRI, but on the living human. And here we are, actually, Steve Kassem is with us here today. On the left, and Mark Shearer and myself on the right, doing an atlas of the brain of Mark Shearer in the middle there. And here it is, his brain. And you can see in some detail, I would claim that it's a bit more than you normally see in MRI, with post-processing that Mark Shearer has done, and that you have the benefit of looking at connections in red. In this case, of course, the connections between the two hemispheres. Now, it's important to know if the brain is the right size, whether it is in the Goldilocks zone. Just consider, we are having an environmental problem, and we're trying to solve it with a problematic brain. I think the brain has not this power that we have attributed to it. We think it's the most complex thing in the universe, that we are made in the image of God. Well, in terms of the structure of the brain, the human brain has no additional structures than the chimpanzee brain. I studied the chimpanzee brain. It's not easy to get the chimpanzee brain. I wrote to the Taronga Park Zoo in Sydney for the opportunity to do a postmortem on a chimpanzee when one died. They responded they would be happy to oblige, but they had not had a death of a chimpanzee in the zoo for a decade. 2 months after receiving my letter, 3 chimpanzees died. Luckily, they didn't suspect me. Studied the brain of one of them. There is no additional structure in the human brain. In fact, this is so for the monkeys as well. Even for the little marmoset primate, the size of a small rat, even it has the same structures as the human brain. Human brain, of course, is larger, species specialization, much like the giraffe has a larger neck. We have a larger brain. But this hubris that were made in the image of God is not justified in terms of studying the brain. And I was telling my granddaughter, tell you what I've learned from her, who is, firstly, I told her there's an environmental problem. I asked her to tell me something she would do today that would not harm the environment. She was 8 years old at that time. She said, running, and I said, that's good. But if you run, then you are wearing out your shoes, and the factories will have to make more shoes, which pollutes the environment. Then she said, running without shoes. And I said, that's very good, but if you run, you increase your appetite, and more cars will come to the city to bring food for you. She said, then sitting on a chair. I said, that's very good, but to construct the chair, you have to cut a tree. Then lying on the ground naked. And the other thing I told her, to alert her of the human hubris, that the ancient gods were actually not taking kindly to human hubris. And if you compared yourself to them, that was an anathema. And I told her the story of Sisyphus, this king of Corinth, who was condemned to push a rock up the mountain every day, only for it to roll down, and he'd have to push it up again. I said, because he was narcissistic, egotistical, and insulting. She said, like Trump. And in my studies of the brain, I have not been impressed with the superiority that is claimed. Yes, larger, twice the size of a chimpanzee brain, but if you really look at behavioral aspects, you will find a lot of shortcomings, and you can see what E.O. Wilson said. Puzzled, we stand before nature. We don't know why we're here. We have Paleolithic emotions. And if I could add, a brain that's made up in part from leftovers of the reptilian period. And yet we have medieval institutions. Just look at religions. They obstruct any effort to stabilize or reduce human reproduction, and might be the easiest way to make some gains against polluting the planet, because negative impact equals number of people by the affluence that they have. If you keep affluence the same, if you have twice as many people, you have twice the problem. But religions, stuck as they are in their things that were true back then, they are obstructing any effort to stabilize population and reduce it to some sustainable level. So medieval institutions, and yet technology that threatens, godlike technology that threatens the existence of our own existence and that of the other living creatures. And with that in mind, my conclusion is the brain, if it were larger, if it were smaller, it wouldn't have produced the problem. If it were larger, it might have understood the problem, even solved it. It is just not the right size. And it is just not in the Goldilocks zone. And thinking of these things, I was trying to do something about it through environmental activism, but I failed in everything I tried. And then I thought, if I were to change not behavior, but attitude, work upstream of behavior, I might be more effective than trying to block somebody from cutting a tree. And so I spent some time writing a novel, A River Divided, this novel probably breaks the record in the time it took to complete, 21 years. I was writing it recently, and a friend stopped by and said, "How is the book going?" As she would always ask. I said, 21 years, still haven't finished. She said, "My cousin's novel was published posthumously." I said, "You are giving me hope." Neuroscience principles are used in formation of characters, such as those related to the mind, soul, free will, and consciousness. Environmental issues are the core of the novel. You can see here, A River Divided. And it came out 2 months ago here in Greece. It was interesting how many errors were in the English version when you translate it. You put it in Google, and if Google doesn't translate it well, it's that it's not written well in the original, logically in the original. So I'm impressed with the translation Google does if you have it written logically. And the River Divided. There's the divided river, Rio Solomos and Rio Negro. And there is the forest, Amazonian forest, and there's Buenos Aires, the cathedral where things take place. Here I am with Cecina Ferreira, the first girlfriend of Che Guevara, who allowed me to use our conversation in the novel. Then, unfortunately, she died last year. And you are all welcome to come to the presentation of the book on the 6th of November, as you can see there, in Gipo 2 Museo, in the garden of the museum, next to the National Museum on Patision, noontime. And thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the audience?
I left time.
Sure. We have there for a question.
Excellent talk, Professor Paxinos. Every time I hear you, I am fascinated by you and your views and your work. I think it's not the size of the brain that makes us who we are, because people, very important people in humanity, like Einstein, like Epicurus, like Aristotle, had about the same size of brain. So it's the synapses and what theory we have in our brains that motivates us that makes the difference. I think what you're trying to say is that we don't have the right theory right now prevalent in the world. We have religious fanaticism, we have political fanaticism, we have the fake idea that money worth more than people. How stupid this is for everybody, I'm saying this, is just imagine for how much money you would go blind or paralyzed. Of course, money is not better than people. So we need to change our mentality, our theory, and I think most of us are good people, or potentially good people. There are some sociopaths, some narcissists, but they are a minority. But they're controlling what we're doing. So it's up to us to be enlightened, and science can do that, and the proper philosophy can do that, and proper politics and proper art can do that. Books like yourself, like the one you told us about, can do that. So we need to read books. So it's up to us to change this.
Yes.
Everybody, this is my proposal. It's not the size of the brain, but how we use it.
Yes, look, I agree with what you said, and of course, size in quotation marks. And indeed, that is why in the novel I picked someone who was responsible for a change of thinking, a reevaluation, a reconsideration of what's required now. It's a consideration of religion, of culture, of science. And there was a brief time after Christ that people actually went for helping one another. Not now, you wouldn't expect that much from the churches now, but there was. And in fact, the hero in the book is the philosopher Christ. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you very much for the wonderful, thought-provoking presentation. So I come from AI background, and we try to use, identify biomarkers to predict dementia. And brain size has been one of the, important features that we use. So the volumetric size of the brain is quite a predictor. So the smaller your brain, or as we grow, our brain size reduces because of the volume. And that correlates with the risk. So you said size in quotation marks. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, yes. But you're right that as we grow, the brain gets smaller. And if there's one wish that I would like to leave this group with, may your brain shrink less than expected for your age. Yeah, size in quotes, because amongst humans, while there is a slight correlation between brain size and intelligence, it is small. So you can have a good writer with 1.5 kilos brain and another one also good, equally good, with 1 kilo. So within the species doesn't seem to make much difference, but of course across species, with the huge difference between the chimpanzee and us, 600 grams versus 1,300 grams, more than twice the large brain, it seems to be the biggest difference that you can tell that we have no chimpanzees attending this lecture. So yeah, the brain does matter, the size that way. Yes.
Okay, don't have any other question. Okay, thank you again.
Thank you.
And I would like to invite the chairman of the conference, Professor Vlamos, for an overall summary of the conference and a farewell to all of you.
Thank you. It's nice being here at the end of Genedis 2022. During Yorgos' excellent lecture, I was thinking if I could summarize what happened in Genedis 2022 in only one sentence, and mainly this was, I was thinking in parallel by hearing him, sorry, George. So I was thinking that what we had here, what happened is that we had 40 keynote speakers of the highest possible impact in their disciplines, which were different, that they offered generously to us their fresh ideas in research, and most of all, they discussed between them as friends. I think this, for me, summarizes what happened in Genedis 2022. I wanted also to thank a lot of people, but I can not say the names. I'm thinking most of the structures. Genedis, besides the help of all the people that come here, the 40 keynote speakers and exactly 127 lectures and 3 workshops that happened, and this is the true Genedis, has a structure which is based mainly in 3 things. The lab of bioinformatics and human electrophysiology lab, our department of informatics, and the Ionian University. Those 3 structures seems to work excellent the last years, and they support us all the time in whatever we do. But of course, it's not the structures, but it's the people inside. So the faculty members that are working inside our lab, the affiliated members, the PhD students, the postdocs, everyone who is in BH Lab is giving their best at its Genedis to support us in any way, and I mean that. The faculty and the Department of Informatics, or my colleagues, are always there to help me with whatever we ask concerning Genedis, and also I want to thank our head of department, Professor Manos Magos. Ionian University is also there for us anytime, and you could see that moving along Corfu to a different place like Zakynthos, everyone was motivated and tried to help us in the best possible way here. Even the department was a department of environment, but yet they give us the best in all that we could imagine. Besides the university, the prefecture would help us, the municipality was here, and they all give tremendous effort to push forward what we are doing. So many thanks to all of them, and I should say exceptionally only one name that was working 24 hours, 7 days a week, I don't know for how many months. It's my PhD student, Konstantinos Kolariki, that was working. Thanks for that. You all had a lot of emails from her, I know that, and many communications, and she is excellent, and I hope that she will be a model for the other PhD students that are coming to our lab. I personally want to thank my family, my wife Ada, and my 2 sons, Mikhail and Angelos. They always support me, everyone on his or her own special way, and I want to thank them personally, sorry. Finally, concerning the future, we are having a decade of Genedis in the next one. This will be Genedis 2024. We decided with a lot of colleagues that it will be done in Athens with a huge number of keynotes, with a new different structure that We believe that it will be innovative as the ones that we have produced since Toronto, and I think it's structures that have an innovation worldwide on how different disciplines can talk together. This will be more significant in what we will do, and it will take place in Athens with a lot of institutions being part of the organization. We already have a very good proposal for collaborations. So I thank you from my heart for being here, and most of all for being friends and good colleagues for us. Thank you very much.
Okay, at around 2, we'll have local music from Zakynthos in about 2 or 3 minutes. Okay. Thank you all.
Barbarori, ari, aro, barbar. Γλυκοφέγγι και τα αστροτσιά αυγούλας. Σημαδεύει πως ο ήλιος τώρα πλέον δια εμάς δεν θα μένει. Να μας βρίσκει ενωμένα τα δυο, τα αχνίζοντας το ωραίο φεγγάρι. Όταν μου έδειχνες το αγνώρισωπο μια βραδιά που με ένα δάκρυο δικό σου όταν με έλεγες πολύ μου σ' αγαπώ, σε στέκοντας
Έλα.